I plug in my microphone. Hello, Gwendolyn. Still waiting for sound here. Hello. Hello. We'll hope for the best. All right, do we have sound now? Hello, hello. No monitor yet. Tuck on it. Again, bear with me just a minute. Yeah, thanks. YouTube sound is good. Facebook sound we're still working on. All right, now we have Facebook sound. All right, let's be official. This is Daily Art Adventure number 891. The feeling of accomplishment. So I'm going to do an oil glaze here in just a minute, but before I do that, I'm going to do oil sticks. Some abstract stuff. Orange, red, let's switch to a yellow and burnt sienna brown. I don't use that very often in the oil stick, because usually I'm looking for intense color. But and before we put that away, let's do some green and blue. All right, once again, all of that is not quite as courageous. It is courageous, but it's not quite as courageous as it looks, because I'm about to do a glaze on top of all those marks, and those marks will get diminished a great deal. Hello, Donna Stocks Hardy and Rusty. All right, let's talk about glazing. First of all, I'm using a mixture of mediums today. What for me is a medium slow dry, Neil McGilp, mixed with liquid, so I'm getting half and half. So again, in my world, that's a a medium slow dry, because liquid by itself is a very fast dry. So liquid with Neil McGilp is medium fast. All right, let's talk about colors. So here's a routine I go through. I ask you to go through it, and I go through it myself anytime I'm doing one of these late glazes. And I almost called this my final oil glaze, but I'm not 100% sure that this will be the final. So I just called it the second oil glaze. All right, here's the routine this is what I insist that my students say. They have to look at their painting and say, well, I like it pretty much. Now, I really do like it pretty much, so. But even if you don't, you say, I like it pretty much. I just wish it was more, and more better is not the is not the right answer to that question. You say, I wish it was more blank, and the blank is a color. Now, neither lighter nor just a color, not a value, not lighter or darker. I just wish it was more, and you'd say color. All right. So for me, I like it pretty well. I just wish all this warm blue, greenish blue stuff up here was a little more cool blue, ultramarine. So I'm sure I'm going to do some ultramarine up there. In the middle here, I'm sure I'm going to do some warming glazes, oxide red, Indian yellow, maybe Scarlet Lake, whatever, brownish, in other words, right there, maybe even through the sky here. And over here, I like this pretty well. It's just a little too green. So I'm going to anti-green it. I've already got oil sticks in there that are red and brown, so that will actually help a little bit. And the foreground, probably brown and darker over here, brown and blue. All right, good enough. So I'm going to start with the part that I feel somewhat sure about, and that is the ultramarine blue up here at the top. Now it's always shocking. I've gotten pretty used to it. When you first start putting down a glaze, it can be pretty shocking. I love doing this, by the way, at wedding receptions. I've been working for hours, you know, on a portrait of the bride and groom in acrylics, and then when I switch to oils, everybody in the room gasps, and I kind of get a kick out of that. So that's way too dark, of course. But before I even grab a rag, which I'm certainly inclined to do, I'm just going to pick it up with some brushes and move it. So what I'm doing here is vignetting this corner a little bit, make it slightly darker. Same thing down here. So the more I rub those oil stick marks, the more they'll disappear, and they'll just turn into a faint haze of color. But if I don't rub them very much, you'll still be able to see very faintly the strokes, the marks, the lines that I made with them. So the control is in how much I rub. I'm using two 3-inch chip brushes here, cheap chip brushes. I like to call them, love them. I love chip brushes, and I'm very lucky that they're the cheapest kind of brush in the whole world. They do shed a little bit, so you have to watch out for that. But all right, I think just rub these brushes, give them not a very good clean, just a quick down and dirty, shall we say, scrubbing, because I want to continue using them. All right, still using this about 50-50 mix of Neo McGilp, and I just realized I am out of Indian yellow. All good. Here we go. Got some more right away. Using a 50-50 mix of Neo McGilp and liquid. In fact, I need to put out some more of that on my palette. Bear with me just a minute while I squeeze out another dollop, maybe a heaping teaspoon of each of those. Okay, so I'm assuming you understand the reason I'm going to a medium slow dry is because you want your painting. Fat over lean is the old-fashioned terminology, which can be profoundly confusing. Do not use the term fat over lean unless you're painting like the medieval masters or like my dad. Okay, back in the day when fat over lean made sense, that was because the word fat that inferred that you were using linseed oil as primarily as your medium, which is slow dry. Okay, so the real truth behind that statement, do not use it, because it's completely deceiving now, because most people do not use, as a matter of course, linseed oil as, or a lot of linseed oil, perhaps I should say, as their go-to medium. So if that is your go-to medium, then you can do fat over lean. But if that's not your go-to medium, if you do anything like I do and use any fast dry medium like liquid and so forth, all right, the real truth is slow dry over fast dry. In other words, you want the underneath stuff to dry first and to dry faster. So that's why I'm using a medium slow dry medium. All right, let me change my verbiage. I'm using a moderately slow dry medium now, just in case there's any part of this painting that I did on finished on Saturday that was slightly slow dry. In case some of it didn't have a lot of liquid in it. That is, liquid is my go-to medium, and it's a fast dry. Okay. But it's possible that there's some part of the painting that I just missed putting enough liquid in it, which means it dried slowly. So anyway, there. Sorry, I'm even tired of talking about that subject, but just in case, because we've talked about it so often, just in case there's anybody new watching, okay? So let me repeat that you might have heard. Fat over lean. Throw it out, chunk it, shoot it, decapitate it, slice it into hamburger, bury it. Forget it. Stop saying fat over lean unless you understand the meaning behind those words, which most early journey painters do not. All right. It means slow dry over fast dry. So as long as you understand what the medium you're putting on your painting, if it speeds up or slows down. All right, enough of that again. All right, so let's see what this thing looks like. But generally, what does it look like? So let's see what it looks like when I start taking stuff off. Okay, it's way too dark. Way too dark? Slightly too dark, the way it is right now. So I'm going to do a pretty aggressive job of wiping stuff off. I feel like every time I do this, I feel like I can hear some non-painter, early journey, non-artist say, well, if you're putting it on, taking it all off, why'd you put it on? And they're saying it with that snarky voice too, I want you to know. Hello, Mario. Thank you very much. Wow. Appreciate that immensely. Super chat from Mario in Chile. Wow. I'm humbled and honored. All right, so the question, why, if I'm going to take it off, why do I put it on? You know, don't you? Because I'm not taking it all off, right? And anybody who's done quality furniture refinishing understands this principle. Because good quality furniture, it's not a painted on finish, it's a rubbed hand rubbed finish. So that's sort of what I'm aiming for here. Very often when I'm doing occasionally when I'm doing a painting, I can simply do this, glaze and wipe off and I'm done. Now, that's not going to be the case on this painting because I'm aware of, I didn't actually completely finish the painting, before I came to this layer. So I've got a fair amount of work to do. That's why it's possible I might even do another glaze tomorrow morning. I'm not so much in a hurry like I used to be. I used to feel like if I didn't finish a painting in one day, the day was a failure. That's a slight exaggeration, but. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. So I've achieved, I've got more ultramarine, darker blue up here. I vignetted the corners. In fact, let me do that again a little bit. Again. And I'm turning the word vignette into a verb. I'm not sure that it actually is a verb. When I say I'm creating a vignette, I call that vignetting. Why not? Darkening the corners. That's not a rule. That not every painting should have the corners darkened, but most paintings, I would say, most. And that's not a battle or a hill I'm willing to die on. Maybe not. But most of my paintings, I do end up making a vignette in the corners. That is, darkening the corners. All right, this side of this building needs some special attention. I really like the abstraction in it, and I don't want to lose that. There we go, that's better. But the whole building needed to be darker, so that's what I've just achieved. All right. Now, you know what? I'm going to go wash my hands. Forgive me. I'll be back in just a second. I've got more medium and stuff on them than I'm comfortable with. When you guys aren't watching, I do this quite often. I need to have a bottle of, wet wipes, handy wipes right here. But they're with my easel that's out in my van. All right. Well, I've got a lot of work to do. Let me show you right off the bat where some of it is. First of all, I have some perspective issues. There's a surprise, and I'm being facetious. It's not really much of a surprise. I've just learned when I paint, without using a ruler or a yardstick, my perspective tends to wander. So right before I started this broadcast, then I took a yardstick and I calculated where my vanishing point is down there somewhere. And this is the building right here that I really wanted to get correct. I also looked at this building over here and this one right here. And indeed, I found out that I was truly off with several of my lines. And I drew lines, I made lines with my unconventional pencil, right? It is not at all conventional to use pencils in a watercolor painting. But I don't think it's going to be too hard to make these corrections. You just, of course, have to remember that I'm doing a painting. I'm not doing an illustration. Okay, so the decorative element, the decorative nature of my marks, the abstract nature of my marks is paramount, is considerably more important than their accuracy. I want them accurate. I hope that's obvious. That's why That's why I got out a yardstick and drew pencil lines, right? I do want them, I absolutely want them accurate. But accuracy is a secondary concern. A primary concern is that the marks be beautiful, be one word. I usually hesitate to use the word beautiful because it kind of opens a Pandora's box philosophically, and I'm more than willing to enter that box, to mix my metaphors. I'm more than willing to enter that fray when the time's appropriate, but sometimes I just don't have the energy to get embattled in some of those heavy philosophical questions. So most of the time I do not use the word or the term, beautiful, but essentially that's what I mean. So my marks, I want my marks to be beautiful, interesting. And so the first thing I've done, and the first thing I'll do over here, is make some corrections with dark paint. I'm going to be right in your way. Let me move you just for a minute here. There we go. So there's rows of windows on this building right here. Do you see? And they got a little out of line, perspective line, that is. So I'm just going to hopefully make quick corrections to all of them. First of all, by applying dark paint, and then I'll come back in just a moment and apply light colored paint, and hopefully all those issues will be done. There was one other thing that I noticed sitting at supper last night, looking at my painting. I hope you all had a great Easter. We did indeed. And David is saying, since that tree is so close, the leaves up left corner, a burst of sunlight in the leaves of the tree. That's a good idea. Yeah. All right, so I discovered that I made the front of this car, I made it too short. Silly. Just silly. But again, not too difficult to fix, I think. That's the dark correction, and in a few minutes I'll come back with the light colored correction. And then so right now I'm really focused on fixing mistakes, quote unquote mistakes. And in a few minutes I'm going to stand back from the painting and not look for mistakes as much as just look for ways to make it a better painting. So I've got another, I thought I was done with the dark stuff, but I'm not. So I hope you're catching a concept here, that making these corrections would be difficult, laborious, if I were trying to hide the marks that I'm making. So the good news is, because I'm more interested in beautiful marks or interesting marks than anything, so to speak, it's not that hard to make the corrections, because I'm not primarily concerned that the viewer can't see these changes. I'm more concerned that all the marks that I'm making be fascinating, interesting, fluid, whatever else other word you want to use. All right, now I think I'm ready to go to some light colored paint. So, you know what I just realized? I don't have the right white paint out. Bear with me just a minute. I know it's in here. I hope I can find it. What I'm looking for, most of the time, my titanium white is an alkyd. You see that word right there? That means it's a fast drying titanium white. All right, does that make sense? Let that sink in. All right, so the fat over lean rule, don't say fat over lean. The rule is slow over fast. Here we go. I think, oh, no. Some of these tubes of paint look like they're white paint, and then it turns out they're not. There we go. All right. So let me triple check. Yeah, so this is a tube of regular titanium white. Because I don't want to use fast dry titanium on top of a medium, of a moderately slow dry medium. Do you get that? Again, so the principle, slow over fast, old-fashioned fat over lean, the principle is very important. It's just you have to change your terminology, because you have to make sure that you do slow underneath, fast on top. Anyway, so I'm going to mix up here a big pile of titanium white that is half fast dry and half slow dry. Does that make sense? I would point my camera down here. If I'd known how long I was going to be working on my palette, I would have done that. But pretty boring stuff, just mixing paint. Not really anything worth watching, in my opinion. So, all right, now I'm going to add some yellow ochre to that to make it a warm white. You know what, before I continue, this building, I want to take more paint off it. Yeah. I mean, it's too dark. I want it lighter. All right. The verticality of this particular building needed some help as well. And how did I figure that out? Oh, I'm so clever. I'm so smart. I put a T-square up there. That's all. In other words, I'm not smart. That's just, there you go. That's a good trick. A T-square comes in handy just to test verticality. And I'm glad I did it, because indeed this building was leaning. Let's check it again. The building was leaning to the left. Yeah. Again, let me just repeat myself. If I was focused on a surgical correction that would be undiscernible, if I was trying to fix, quote unquote, if I were trying to fix my mistakes by making marks that nobody could see, this would be a very long and tedious process. I hope that makes sense to you. I'm trying to figure out a way to say it. But that is not my primary concern. It's a I don't want people to walk up and say, oh, he made a correction there. I certainly don't. but I'm going to achieve that not by surgically correcting things, but by making interesting marks. Now the question is, one of the questions is, if this, and I'm not done up here, or up here, this is maybe finished. The question is this window, is the edge of this window? Huh, no, the window's pretty good. Isn't that funny? So good. Shows you how wonky your eyeballs can get. And not, you know, when I was painting on Saturday, that I didn't immediately, I suspected there was something wrong with this line, and I knew there was something wrong with the perspective. Oh, let me explain a little bit. So why didn't I fix the perspective on Saturday when last time I was painting? The reason is the whole painting was soaking wet, so it was covered with wet oil paint. So I couldn't slap this yardstick down on the painting without creating quite a mess. So this morning when I came back, the painting's all dry, I could slap this down and make marks. Does that make sense? The other day, my friend David was making correct observations, saying that perspective's not right. And of course he was correct, but it wasn't time to make for that reason. That's why I waited till today. And it was very easy today. Painting's dry. I slap that yardstick down and make a bunch of lines, which you can understand would have been quite the mess if I was slapping a yardstick on a wet painting. So 3 cheers for non-alla prima painting. My approach to painting it is sort of a halfway between alla prima. When I am painting, I'm almost painting wet in wet, so like an alla prima painting. I'm not doing like, you know, I'll say an old-fashioned painter who waits for each layer to dry. No, that's not me at all. But as you just heard, yeah, I waited over the weekend for it to dry so I can make those modifications, those changes. I was a little surprised a little while ago when I came and checked the verticality of this line, that this line right beside it was fine. So again, I knew something was off. Frankly, I just didn't worry about it too much the other day. I said, let's fix that later. The perspective is, I don't know if you can see, let me move you down a little bit, is a little bit tricky in this painting. Yes, David, I wish I had changed that now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. There's a street light right there on the corner of the building. Prudence might suggest that I just completely remove it from the painting. That was really dumb that I ended up with a street light right at the corner of the building. It's because the corner of the building kept moving back and forth and back and forth. You can imagine the way I paint, and then it ended up being right there. So, yeah, it's messing. It wouldn't be hard just to remove that maybe and skinny up that pole. I like the idea of a street light there, but it's not worth the coterminous, my terminology, my name for two objects that typically end at the same spot. In this case, they lay on the same spot anyway. Yeah, that's probably, what's the expression? The better part of wisdom? Has something to do with chickening out, might be smarter than trying to keep that street light. Once again, as you all know, the goal always is to create a beautiful painting. The goal is never to replicate, unless you're a hyper-realist, which is certainly not the case here. The goal is never to, do a photographic copy of the painting. I heard it again just the other day, I tell you, from one of my friends who is not an artist. He was talking about a portrait that someone had done of him. And it was a good portrait, but my friend went on. Like, you know the type. You know, you have friends who are not artists who say this. He said, golly, it looks just like a photograph. Right? You know that ejaculation that we hear so often as artists. Usually I just smile, and Saturday when I heard this, I just smiled and nodded and say, yep, wow, yep, wow. And it was certainly a competent photograph. I wasn't criticizing the artist, but the friend, the non-artist, who showed me the picture of it. Oh, I'm getting brushes stuck in my hand again. I don't want to do that. Anyway, so when we hang our paint, no, not we, when somebody hangs our painting, when a buyer, thank God, when a buyer hangs their painting on their wall, they're not going to hang the reference photo next to it and ask people to give the artist a grade, right? I like to say it that way because it shows the absurdity of the notion of that we have to copy the photograph. So right now I'm experimenting with just removing that street light completely. Let me do a real quick job and then see what I think about it. I mean, because with my technique of painting, it does not do well. It does not work well to add entirely new elements. Because I forget now, I lost count, but this is roughly layer 18 or 19 on this painting. Essentially, the whole canvas has 18 or 19 layers, each one of which still impacts to varying degrees what you are seeing, right? So unlike traditional oil painting where they just are using opaque paint, I could just slap a camel walking down the street if I was a traditional oil painter, because I just slap an opaque camel. I can't, I'm being silly with the camel thing, but I can't do that. Why? Because everything here is up to 18 different layers deep. Now, I have certainly developed tricks for making corrections, of course, but it's rather labor-intensive, time-intensive, and so forth, so it's not something. That's why I probably won't add a street light. Like, why don't you just move it, or why don't you just put it there? Now you understand why, right? Because I can't just move stuff around in this technique. In my world of painting, easier said than done. Yeah. Okay. I keep putting off finishing this building all the way down here. Let's try to get that taken care of. Let's try to mix up the right color here. Kind of dirty orange. Dirtier and darker than that. By the way, I just dipped my brush, just to let you know what a heretic I am. I just dipped my brush momentarily into a tiny bit of ivory black paint. Okay, that's another one of my frequent rants. If you've taken any classes at all, if you've especially if you went to college or anything, majored in art, you heard, frankly, till you were blue in the face, you heard, don't use black. And I would like to correct that misnomer, that mistake. What the professors should have been saying is, don't misuse black. Okay, they were right in a sense by telling their students don't use black, because black kills color, and generally speaking, we don't want to kill color in our paintings, right? So that they were correct. So if you've never heard it, file it away. But then once you've internalized it, then you can get more specific and say, oh, yeah, but it's not really true. The truth is, don't misuse black, because there are, in fact, times when a color needs to be killed. I said that one time in a class. I said, there are some colors need killing, and one of my students said, which ones? That was an early journey painter. Which ones? No. I mean, on your canvas, occasionally there's a color that needs killing. I don't mean you can buy a tube of paint from the art store that always needs killing. Anyway, so you can, yes, of course you can use black. Of course you can use black. Are you kidding? You just have to understand how to use it. You have to understand that indeed it kills color. So you want to use it with that understanding. And right there, that was some color that needed killing right there, boy. So I killed it with some black. It was quite satisfactory. Gave me quite a pleasant feeling. I started to say a while ago, the perspective is kind of interesting on this particular view. Bye, sweetie. Thanks. Yep. Dear, my wife Nancy taking off to deliver one of last week's portraits. The reason the perspective is interesting is I'm the viewer. I am, when I took this picture, I'm standing on a little hillock. I'm standing on a little rise. So my feet are about 5 feet above this street. So my head is about 5 plus 6, 11 feet. Let's pretending I'm 6 feet tall. So my, rounding off, of course. So my head is about 11 feet. Well, then my eyes, okay, 10 feet. Do you understand? So we're looking down. So this building right here, see, the perspective goes like this, and then it starts going up. And by the way, yes, I did, certainly did. I actually struggled with trying to catch that vision the other day when I was painting. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that's supposed to be going up. Anyway, so I was pretty careful to check those marks as well with my yardstick, and double check them, make sure they're actually pointing the right direction. They are now. Okay, so I think I have fixed the car. Actually, I just saw another little fix. I want to get rid of that line right there and that one right there. All right, so the car is the right shape. Oh, let's come over here now to this building, and I'm going to move you guys again so I don't stand right in front of you. Well, a lot of people chatting up a storm here. Mario, again, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Wow. Muskie, you're exactly right. It needs more lighter highlights. Now that I've done the glaze on it, that's where I'm at right now. Hello, Monique in the Netherlands. Good evening to you. Monique, good to have you here. Thanks for saying hi and goodbye. Oh my goodness, Uncle will all be over. My goodness. Hello, Sharon Sweeting and George Wallace, all kinds of friends. It's just great great fun to have you guys. Some of you are new. I've been broadcasting on YouTube for 3 years, nearly every day, over 5 days a week for 3 years. That's why today's Daily Art Adventure is number 391. That's literally how many of these we've done. And several of them are more than one episode, so it's probably close to 1,000. And just last week, I finally figured out a way to start broadcasting on both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. Now, some of you are saying, well, wait a minute. I know a whole bunch of people that do that. Yeah, okay, yeah. So wait, let me. It costs $75, at least the service with the cameras I'm using, costs us $75 a month. That's a lot to me, because I'm not making any money worth mentioning. I make about enough to buy my monthly eating out money. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something off the top of the head. Anyway, so $75 a month is outside my budget. So anyway, I had to invent my own tricks for broadcasting. So anyway, it's good to be on Facebook again, as I actually started on Facebook 3 years ago. Anyway, good to be back. Good to have a different set of friends watching. But I feel a little bit compelled to say, if it seems to you, well, if some of the people making comments seem awfully familiar, well, that's because they are. We've been doing this for every day for 3 years, so don't worry about it too much. One of the things I'm doing right now is covering up the pencil lines that I used to correct my perspective. And now I'm wishing, man, I wish I hadn't pressed down so hard on the pencil. You know, that old sort of dumb, darn, shouldn't have done that. Made more work for myself. But I'm just about done. All right, now I think I've fixed my mistakes. Perspective, lamppost, that's a good call. Perspective here, and the car got lengthened. My pedestrians might need a little bit of work, just a little bit, not to draw a lot of attention to them. Oh, that brings to mind another lesson that I say often in painting, and this would be a good time to repeat it again. If all the time, first of all, let's back up. People ask the question all the time, how do you know when a painting's finished? Sometimes they think it's a joke, or, you know, and if you're an artist and you know very well it's not at all a joke, it's a very good question. That's one of the hardest answers to answer. Most of us tend to overdo our work, right? All right, so in that realm of thinking, that mindset, if all the time that you spend, or even if a great majority of time that you spend on your painting serves similitude, serves realism, if you're working on your painting more and more and more and more in order to make it more and more and more realistic, then time is your enemy. If you'll let me be blunt and make the point, okay? If the great majority of time you spend on a painting energy you spend. When your brush is on your canvas, it's because if it's because you're trying to make something look more real, then for you, spending time on your painting can quickly become counterproductive. And then for you, the question, when is a painting finished, is difficult and dreadfully important. I need to, need to leave you guys for a minute because I have run out of paper towels. So forgive me, I'm gonna run to the garage, get a stack of, we have our stash of coronavirus paper goods out here in the garage. My wife was kind of ahead of the curve in getting stuff. She ordered masks for us way back early before everything was crazy. I thought she was a little crazy, but turns out she was just ahead of the curve. I've learned most of the time not to think my wife is crazy, by the way. I don't know how long you've been married, but all right, so if the great majority of the time that you spend with your brush on your canvas, your goal is moving the painting toward realism, then time is your enemy. If, however, a significant amount of the time that you spend on your canvas is actually going the opposite direction, that is going toward abstraction and interestingness and so on, then time is not so much your enemy. So that's where I want to fall here today. The painting is essentially finished. Right? Now that I've made those corrections, the drawing, so to speak, the drawing is done. I've got a little bit of fixer-upper to do right here. The drawing is done. There's some tiny things like a lamppost over here I want to add some, but let's just do that right now since I got a brush here. And of course, there's no end to things that I could do, right? You understand that, right? There are all kinds of things that I could do. There's no end to that, right? And that's that kind of thinking, that's what gets you into trouble. Like, how do you know when a painting is finished? Well, it's not when you've done everything you could do. No, if you do that, your painting was finished hours ago and you just didn't get the memo, right? We just got a strange sound. Is everybody okay? Our electricity went this morning. We had a big row of thunderstorms went through. They were threatening even tornadoes today, but we got through without any trouble. Got out, had no electricity for about an hour and a half. The grandchildren loved it. They all cried. They didn't cry. They all booed when the electricity came back on. I'm going to literally stand back from my painting here. I'll let you stand back with me. Do we have sound again? Do we have sound again? Hello, hello? Okay, we do. Hello, Anson Clark. My goodness. You just never know what kind of dear old friends might show up. Bless you. Love you, Anson. Good to see your face. See your name. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up a small rag and I'm going to lift out areas again. Those kind of small areas would save myself a little bit of work, right? If I don't have to repaint all things lighter, if I can just wipe it off and make it lighter. I ended up having a lot of fun with this sky the other day. Oh, there's an edge of this, a little bit of this building up here that I want to be white, and so that's a little bit that's not finished. I have a red pencil in my hand at the moment. You're well to ask, what are you doing with a red pencil? And why are you doing that with a red? Okay, so that's done with that. Now I've got a black pencil in my hand. Adding a little bit of grit. I know that, I remember now, the top of this building never got worked out, never got finished, so. Got some happy kid crying going on over there. And they know they're not supposed to cry when I'm broadcasting, but you know how that goes. I tell a 3-year-old kid, don't cry. How's that working for you, Mr. Dan? I might go tell him though. Oh. The mom came and got him before I did. Okay, I think so the marks even that I'm making right now, smearing paint with my thumb, you understand that that's not realism, similitude, or drawing. That's affect, in this case, light effects. But anyway, let's just paint a bit and see what happens. I think I want to do some lightening. I'm not sure exactly where, but I think I'm going to start with the sky, I think. Give me just a second to clean off my, scrape off. I use a glass palette. For those of you maybe who haven't seen my palette, there it is. Isn't that a thing of beauty? And just a glass palette with a plywood edge, this aluminum edge around it, and a backing board, a board on the back of it that holds it together. All right, I'm gonna do some sky stuff. I'm not sure this is the right color. Nope, it's not. I've mentioned before, in a very strange way, let me take my glasses off for a minute. I'll do this. Skies are hard for me to paint. Hang on, let me explain kind of the crazy reason why. The reason is, I think, in my own opinion, I'm very good at painting super realistic skies and clouds. So believe it or not, when it's time for me to paint a sky, it's easy for me to accidentally become too tight, realistic, accurate. Does that make sense? I love skies. If you go on a trip with me of any length, I'm the crazy kid. I'm the crazy person in the car that says, wow, look at that sky. And half the people in the car look at it and yawn and say, uh-huh. What's the matter with you? Anyway, turns out we're not all the same, all us human beings. We have a lot in common, but we also have a lot that we're different about. Anyway, so I love skies. I pay a lot of attention to skies, and I can draw them really accurately. I sort of understand their construction, what makes them look the way they do, and all kinds of weird, and I'm not unusual. A lot of you who are artistic, you're the same, you're just like me. You understand that impulse. But a funny consequence of that is it makes it hard for me to paint a sly. I have a hard time painting slides too. It makes hard for me to paint a sky in a beautiful abstract manner, because I tend to slide into realism or tightness. So there's a couple things I can do to counteract that impulse. One is paint with my left hand. I tend to paint more intuitively, less controlledly. It feels like I'm painting on a different side of my brain. Yuck, yuck. I don't know if that's true or if I've just heard that, that legend and bought in. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter, but it does feel like my brain is my brain does feel like it's different when I paint with my left hand. And the best word I can come up with it is I think I tend to paint a little more intuitively. The other thing I can do, which I'm doing right now, is I can take my glasses off. Now that only works if you need glasses, of course, which I didn't till I reached the older half of my life. But I'm going to put my glasses back on for a minute because I have a very specific, just a little while ago I picked up a black pencil and made an abstract swoosh mark right through the sky. You probably can't see it. I couldn't see it without my glasses on. And if you're new to my channel, it would be very reasonable for you saying, "What are you doing?" That would be okay. You wouldn't need to feel dumb. It's not what most painters do. Yeah, some do it way more than I. But anyway, it was just a purely abstract mark. But if I just leave that pencil line sort of sitting on top of the painting, it just looks like, oh, that's strange. Why did somebody take a pencil and drag it right across the middle of the paint? Seemed like a kind of an immature mark. So I have this little trick that I play on myself and on those marks. That is, after making such a mark, very often what I've just done, I've painted up to both sides of that pencil line. So now that pencil mark I made a few minutes ago is in the painting. It's not on the painting, it's in, because I've got paint coming up on both sides of it. And all of that changes the feeling of that pencil mark completely. For one thing, it tells the viewer, like, I don't know why he did that, or what in the world he was talking about, but doggone it, it sure looks like he did it on purpose, because he came back and and folded it into the paint itself. So at least that leaves them wondering why, not thinking I made a mistake. Like, here's a parallel to that. My paintings all have lots, especially down here, have lots of drips, runs in them from the underneath, from the acrylic stage. And fairly early in my painting journey, I had a couple different people, I think they happened 3 times, asked me to come back and fix their painting because it had drips in it. Oh my goodness. Whew. See, I can still, 10, 15 years later, I can still almost get angry. Or I can just laugh at the sheer whatever, just on so many levels. That is just so preposterous. On so many levels, it's hard for me to get it out. But anyway, so one of the solutions to make sure that didn't happen again was just make sure that I have enough, make sure I have plenty of drips so that nobody could construe the drips as unintentional or accidental. Funny, funny, funny. Life of an artist. Go my easel. My easel can go higher than this. But right there's the ceiling, so I better stop. I've punched punched holes in the ceiling already. Don't want to do that again. It's too much work to patch it up. Okay, close. Not quite. I'm going to repaint that color, paint over the color I just did. Right there, this turquoise blue down here near the horizon. It simply needs to be lighter than it is. So just add some straight titanium white to that little mix. And I can paint right on. Got a piece of foreign debris on my brush. It's no fun. Now, you understand, that doesn't mean I have to get angry, grumpy, or obsessive, compulsive, and cover up all the darker blue stuff, right? No. Take advantage of this moment. Let it show through so you get a multiplicity of textures. In oil painting, or painting in art of all kinds, I hate to burst your bubble, but almost always, my language is very precise, almost always more is more, contrary to what the smart aleck who wanted to sound intelligent, modern, groovy, cool with it, who say less is more. Yeah, that's an ironic statement. It's supposed to be ironic. It's been said so many times that now a bunch of half-wits in our society run around thinking it's literal. And it's not literal, it's ironically true. Anyway, sorry, and I just insulted our society. That's not a very nice thing to do, is it? Anyway, so what got me onto that? Well, because more layers down here is better than less. In painting, almost always, and drawing, and sculpture, whatever you name it, in the arts, almost always more is more. Remember that. The contrary, the opposite of that is ironically true, and that's a very important distinction. That means it's not literally true. So you have to know when to employ that. Of course there are times, but anyway, never mind, I don't want to talk about that. Evidently there are a lot of things I don't want to talk about today. A little bit more blue reflection off these car windshields. In fact, okay, without having said it, I've entered into what often is the final phase, final stage of my painting process, which in this case, again, is about layer number 20, 21, 22, something like that. And it's what I call sparkle. Cool, Michael. Black, white on black. Hello, Elsie. Thank you very much. And hello, Carla Bass. Good to see your name. Thanks for watching. I don't know if you're still with us or not. I know how Facebook is. People come and go. That's all right. So by the time I say respond to somebody, they've been gone for 10 minutes, half the time, I imagine. I understand how this works. As long as you do, we're all in this together. All right, sparkle. So what I just did right there is this classic sparkle. It's this principle. I can put it this way. In painting, It almost always looks good. No, let me back up. Let me back up. In the realm of painting, human beings, the reason I say it in such a pompous manner is because I'm trying to do an intentional end run around people say, well, that's your opinion. No, I might be wrong. And if you're a way better artist than I am, I will seriously consider your opinion. I'm not usually this snarky, but hang on. Human beings do not like seeing dark paint on top of their light paint. When I say their light paint, I just mean they don't like seeing a painting where there's dark paint on top of light paint. Now, forgive me, and I know some of you are going to go, well, I got a BFA and I never heard anybody say, I know, hang around, you're going to hear a lot more of that kind of stuff. Stuff you didn't hear when you were getting your MFA. There's reasons for that. They weren't teaching you how to paint, they were teaching you how to make political statements. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. All right. Most of the time. I mean, most places where you get an MFA or BFA. Same for me. They didn't teach me how to paint either. Anyway, human beings don't like seeing dark paint on top of light paint. They do, conversely, get a particularly strange pleasure out of seeing light paint on top of dark paint. So I'm just going to let that stay there. I'm not going to defend it any more than I already have. I've already made a jerk out of myself by defending it. All right, so when you're painting, so I'm talking to the artists or people who want to know what it's like, how to think like an artist anyway. When you're painting, it almost always looks good. You've got a certain color, let's call it X, color X on your canvas. And I'm going to call white, titanium white, 1. So X plus 1 is X color with a little bit of titanium, so it's slightly lighter. X color looks good with a little bit of X plus 1 on top of it. It does not look good with X minus 1 on it, slightly darker, because we don't like seeing dark on top of light. We like seeing light on top of dark. If you understand that, that can help you immensely in your painting. So, and some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. There are times when you have to put dark paint. Well, duh, of course. Now, by the way, none of this applies to watercolor, okay? So hang on. This is only acrylic and oil, the opaque people. Maybe you know, I saw one of my art friends today doing a gouache painting, Scott Christensen. What? Scott Christensen does gouache? Anyway, that was on Instagram, I think. Anyway, so no, this is only applying to the opaque mediums. We like seeing light on dark. We don't like seeing dark on light. And some of you are saying, yeah, but that's ridiculous. There's times you have to do dark. Check, check, check. Correct, of course. If I want to be more snarky, I'd say, duh, I never thought of that. That would be really rude for me to go down that path, so I won't. I'm really in a snarky mood this afternoon. All right. Of course, there are times when you have to put dark paint on top of light. Otherwise, you end up with a painting that's pure white. A canvas, white canvas, right? It's all downhill from there. Okay, so there's two things. Number one is when you find yourself in a position where you, in fact, yes, do have to put dark paint on your canvas. And again, this is not something they taught you when you're getting your BFA, your whatever. So just because you haven't heard it doesn't mean I'm not right. So when you do have to put dark paint, here's what you do. You do transparent dark paint because it feels very, very, very different than opaque dark paint. Okay, so that's step number one. When you do have to put dark paint on your canvas, you just make sure that it's transparent dark paint. Then secondly, you're not done yet. Once you've put the dark paint down, I'm gonna exaggerate just to make the rule is you always, 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 always come back and do light paint on top of that, adjacent to it, next to it. Now when I say on top of, I don't mean you cover up the whole thing. but you put a little dab on top of it. All right, so I've never used this terminology before. Let me go back to it. If X is the color that's on your canvas, and the number 1 is a dab of titanium white, X plus 2 is more titanium white, X plus 3 is a whole lot more titanium white, then your painting will actually look good if you do X plus 1 everywhere. And in a sense, that's what I'm doing right now. I just did it here in the blue. I did it on the sky. That was a little different because it was so big. But what I just did right there. Let's go somewhere else. Let's come over here to this face of this building. And this is what I call sparkle. If you incorporate, first, if you're an early journey painter, if you're in the realm of painters who, let's say, I judge when I'm judging painting shows. I don't judge national shows, right? I know, I know where I fit in. I'm not making any crazy. So if you're the kind of artist that is in a local show that I'm judging, 90% of you, 90% of the paintings I see could use more sparkle. All right, phew, boy, that's worth the price of admission right there. 90%, that might be a conservative estimate, 90% of the paintings that I judge or that I see in my monthly painters groups could use more sparkle. And again, then some snarky, smart aleck person says to me, well, does that mean your paintings need more sparkle? The answer is heck yeah. What do you think I'm doing? Are you with me? So of course, that's why. and of course, could you just end up with too much sparkle? Of course, that's called a completely white canvas. If you want to get reductio ad absurdum, of course. Anyway, so there you go. For somebody out there, that was worth the price of admission. How much did you guys pay to get in here today? Anyway, I'd like to know that, because I'd like to know who's collecting on this business. I'm quite kidding, of course. All right, so as I said, 90% of the paintings I see. So by the way, just for what it's worth, see, I didn't even get into Oil Painters of America this year. That's irritating. That's just the way it goes. You can't worry about it, can't lose sleep over it. So would I say that same thing, say for instance, about the paintings I might see at the Oil Painters of America National Show? The answer is no. No, the caliber of artists and painters there is, see, they all know this. They probably have different terminology, because I didn't get this terminology from somebody else. I made it up myself. So the likelihood of somebody else saying the same thing is virtually nil. But they know the principle. And yeah, the OPA National Show is that good. They are the grand something of mother of all oil painters in America. Every year about 2,000, 3,000 of mostly professional painters like myself apply to get into the show, and less than 10% actually get in. So there you go. I'm not exactly gonna cry my eyes out because I didn't get in. My job is to figure out how I can be a better painter. Doggone it, puts fire in my bones. I hope you're like me in that regard. When you see somebody who's better than you, I think most of you are like this. When we see somebody who's better than us, it puts fire in our bones, makes us go, whatever that means, right? Just like, dang, I'm gonna figure out what do they know that I don't know yet? What do they know that I don't know? So you can read books, you can take classes, you can watch people on YouTube like me You can all watch, I shouldn't say this, but you can also watch a bunch of screwballs on YouTube who, my goodness, do not imitate them anyway. But I will not name names. I promise I will not. You can't, wild horses couldn't drag the names out of me. Anyway, there's some amazing, amazing artists on YouTube. There really are. They're the ones that I want to follow and watch, not the ones who are not amazing. And there's a lot of those too. I won't name names, but I'll give you a description. If you are young and female and moderately attractive, you can get tens of thousands of viewers. Now, I'm not saying that just because someone is young, female, and attractive, that they're not a good painter. So, you know what I mean? But there are some out there that explains their popularity. You know it's true anyway. It's probably not politically correct for me to say that, but politically correct to schmecta. Who the heck cares? I'm not interested in being politically correct. So I'm doing a couple things over here. One is, again, I'm painting around pencil lines that I slapped down in a very abstract manner a little while ago. So I'm trying to match the color that's around them and paint just up to those lines. Now, I don't know what you call this. This is such a Dan Nelsonism. You know, I wouldn't even necessarily encourage you to emulate me in this regard. This is not like some hidden magic, hidden secret. No. It's just a strange idiosyncratic thing that I do. I can't even explain why I do it. It's just, I think it looks cool. I do this kind of thing very much in my abstract paintings. I just like that feeling of you draw a line and then you paint up to both sides of it. That's all I can say. Don't even know why I like it. I just think it looks cool. So you find something that you think looks cool. I mean, you can do it if you want to. It won't bother me, but I'm just telling you, it's not like some secret sauce. It's just a crazy Dan Nelsonism. I have yet to tackle this face of this building, and I do need to tackle that eventually. I think now that I might be avoiding it. Well, hello, Sherry Dayton. Sherry Dayton Maxwell. Thank you. What? Uncle 60, I didn't change anything. You can't click on anyone's icon and go to the YouTube page anymore. What's with that? I don't know. Fire in my bones. It's called arthritis. Get out of here. Uncle 60 provides comic relief over on YouTube daily. We'd be very disappointed. We are disappointed when he doesn't show up among us and make us all laugh. Okay, so I'm just doing some sparkle and then some scratching. Ooh, you know what? I don't like this. This is too much of a good thing right here. So when you put some paint down and then you decide you shouldn't have put it down for any reason, it's the wrong color. In this case, it was just too much and too light. Let me give you a little instruction, because again, I know how many early journey painters think. They get mad at themselves, and then somewhat embarrassed of themselves. Like, how can I make a stupid mistake? So they try to remove evidence of their quote unquote mistake, and that's a mistake. Okay, so you don't start wiping stuff off. just mess it up a little bit. So you saw me, I took a rag and rubbed through it, not in an erasing, not like this kind of manner, but just moving it around. Does that make sense? Let me do a little more sparkle. Down here at the end of this street, row of buildings that we're looking at, I've got some buildings down here that are actually pink, and that's all right. But I want some lighter pink. I want some sparkle on there. And then I'm gonna mess it up, move it around a little bit. Likewise over here, some pink would look nice over here. Sparkle, the same color as what's already there. So earlier this afternoon I was calling whatever color is there, I'm just calling it X. X plus 1 means X plus a little bit of titanium white, usually. I mean, you can get light with other colors, you know, yellow ochre or something, but generally speaking. And generally speaking, when there's a color X, and it might look pretty good just as X, but if you dab a little bit of X plus 1 across on top of part of it, not the whole thing, of course, we're not talking about obliterating X, we're just talking about doing something just on top of it. It almost always looks better. Right, so you can see this is what I'm doing right now. I call all of this classic sparkle. The same color that's already there. This covers very, very little of the canvas. You know, it's just like a sparkle would be on a, you know, on the lip of a wine glass or a goblet, you know, in an old Dutch still life painting. The sparkle doesn't cover up very much of the canvas, right? It's really tiny. The sparkle in an eye, it's really tiny, but it's frightfully important. And again, I said in a flash of inspiration, a while ago, I said 90% of the paintings that I see out there in the quote-unquote local art world could use more sparkle, okay? So, my friend, that almost certainly includes you, whoever you are. Yeah, this is looking so much better. Can you see it? Let me put down this yellow, orange, brown stuff for a minute, and I'll use those brushes again in a minute, so I'm not going to clean them up. I want to switch over to let's do some blue sparkle over here. I already did a little bit up here, but I want to do some down here. As I said, every once in a while something comes out that I just have a sense, I just have a feeling in my bones, in my buns, that if you're an artist and you're watching today, then that might have been for you. That is just, and it's usually something, I've never said it that way before. And I've never said that you know, 90% of the paintings that I see could use more sparkle. But I do believe it's true. So what happens is, often I'll say something like that for the first time, or like today I've also said, never said this business about X plus 1 is better than just X. If it sticks with me, if it sinks into my bones, then it might become a Dan Nelsonism, something I repeat over and over and over. I repeat things over and over. I also come up with new things, as you can hear, but I say things over and over because I'm really trying to be a good teacher, and I know that repetition is one of the best ways to teach. So when my regulars joke and say, I've got Dan Nelson stuck in my head, fact, it was a couple months ago, several months ago maybe, we were having technical problems. Say it ain't so. I think we were having technical problems and I lost all sound. And I went back later and read some of the chats that were said while we were flying silent. And somebody said, that's all right, we can all hear what he's saying anyway, or we know what he's saying. We can all say it in our heads. Thank you, whoever said that. That struck me very funny. Yep. Getting in here now. One good question you might ask is, so how much sparkle? Well, generally more is more, not less is more. Generally more is more, until it becomes, so sparkle is a closely related to the subject of busyness, right? Energy, texture, busyness. So the answer would be, you don't want this kind of energy over your whole canvas, or the canvas is exhausting, trying to look at, right? Political correct women comment, no such thing. If Dan took his shirt off, I would lose all my views. Yeah, I'm reading your long story, Radina. That is exactly right. I shared with you guys, oh man, it was probably about 4 months ago now, just drifting around, surfing on YouTube, and I came upon an artist, young man, who did large, like this big, very realistic landscapes. And yeah, everybody oohs and ahs. And he held a brush, typically about this big, painted the entire thing with a brush his size, in his right hand, like this. You know, it took hours and hours and hours and hours for him to finish painting. Here's the tragic part. He had one of those carpal tunnel sleeves on his hand. The poor young man had literally was destroying his hand by painting in that manner. Oh, broke my heart. I would have jumped through, yelled at him, yelled at him, stop, 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 you're ruining your hand. But he had, 50,000 views, 80, 60, 100,000 views, and all these people going, ooh and ah, ooh and ah. I mean, they were beautiful nature scenes. You know the drill. Big sunset clouds, glorious craggy mountain with snow and pine trees and distant hills and water and a waterfall and the deer by the water and the whole schmear. And well, we talk about that enough around here, don't we? We don't need to frighten off any newcomers. Too late. Okay, so newcomers. So what's wrong with that? Why? Well, first of all, nothing's wrong with it, really. On a deep level, first of all, let's not get all hot and bothered or high and mighty, either one. Nothing. And it may be that, I'll use good old-fashioned traditional language. Maybe God put this person on a planet to do that exact thing. It's like maybe Bob Ross did exactly what he was supposed to do. Okay, so let's get over it. I'm saying to myself, just get over it. Not everybody's supposed to be like you. Check, check, check. Okay. So if that's what you like, and if that's how you want to paint, no problem. But there is a problem because there's a good chance that that's not really why you're on the planet and not really how you're supposed to paint. You're just stuck in the first half of your art journey. And that's a whole discussion I'm going to save for another time, but that's a terminology I use. First half of art journey, you're supposed to paint stuff that looks like stuff. The second half of your art journey, you paint stuff that looks like paint. Okay, but let's go. So what's wrong with, say, besides the fact that this poor young man is literally destroying his limbs in order to paint in that manner, what's wrong with painting in that? And let's say if he wasn't hurting himself, would I, Dan, still protest against that sound? And the answer is heck yeah. Now why though? Okay, that's. I mean, my art professors in college also would have railed against, but my art professors would rail against this too. See, so I don't generally agree. That's, we've talked about that quite a bit, So what's wrong with painting what I'm going to call that thing I just described a minute ago, purdy pictures. Yes, with a southern accent. I don't know why, but that's what comes out. Purdy pictures. What's wrong with painting purdy pictures? Well, I'm going to tell you what's wrong with painting purdy pictures, okay? I'll give you just a short story. A couple years ago, I was putting together a document, a teaching handout, a page that I would hand out at my painting class. And the name of this page was called Real Painting. On the left, I had a painting, copyright infringement all over the place. It was a copy of a Robert Wood, 1950s, beautiful landscape. On the right at the top, I had a painting by Edgar Payne, 1950s American beautiful landscape painting. So they were both same period of history and roughly the same genre. And as I was preparing, my oldest daughter, who, if you listen to me long, you'll know that I think the world of my highly gifted and intelligent oldest daughter, Alicia, the mother of the 4 kids that you hear running around here. She walked through my office, I don't remember why. Or anyway, I showed her this page, and I told her briefly, what I was teaching, what I was doing with it. And she looked at the painting on the right, the one by Robert Wood, which was in my handout was the bad example, which is Robert Wood painted purdy pictures, okay? And she didn't miss a beat. In a second, she said, "Oh, Goodwill." Okay, that's pretty astute. In other words, to my daughter, who is now 30, she's born in 82, so what? She is 37. She'll be 38 at the end of this year. To my 37-year-old daughter, when she saw this purdy picture from the 1950s, again, beautiful sunset, rocky, craggy mountain with snow, lake, trees, lake, deer, waterfall. To her, it said, "Oh, that's one of those paintings you buy at Goodwill for $2.50. Now, she didn't mean the original, of course, but that's what she correlated. Okay, so that's just a pretty interesting and pretty astute observation from one young person. What's wrong with painting pretty pictures? Believe it or not, one generation's purdy picture becomes, actually a couple generations, fuddy-duddy, old-fashioned, because people's taste in what doth a purdy picture make changes. It's mercurial, to use that fun terminology. Okay, it goes up and down, it shifts, it changes. When we look at, a lot of the stuff that we might pull up from even from the Renaissance, but certainly from the medieval ages of history, medieval Europe, what is purdy picture to them is actually kind of off-putting to us very often. Like, ew, we'll look at it because it's famous in art history, but it's kind of creepy. Does that make sense? So as much as I might like Thomas Kinkade, and I say that in jest because I know that as an artist, it's my beholden duty to hate him. I don't, you understand? But I lose points for not despising, and I'm not saying I like him either. I'm just saying using him as a good example. what was a fascinating, pretty picture in 1999, tragically will turn into goodwill in 2040. So what is it that we're supposed to paint then if we're not supposed to paint pretty pictures? And so glad you asked. The answer is we're supposed to paint things that look like paint. So in the first half of our journey, we're supposed to learn, in my opinion, the best art journey is to learn to paint stuff that looks like stuff. Learn to paint pretty pictures. In the second half of your art journey, you're learning how to paint stuff that looks like paint. Forgive the cute language, but what that means is you're learning line, shape, color, design, value, texture, and so forth. Now so by the way, I'm still doing sparkle here. See, this is X, the color of this side of the building is X, and now I'm putting X plus titanium, which for some reason I'm calling X plus 1. And that's a little bit too light. I need to darken that up a little bit. It's too much of a jump from what was there to what I'm putting down now. So I'm going to darken this a little bit. I can leave that there, but I'm going to modify it a little bit. All right, so here's what I think. If we do a good job, not of painting pretty pictures, but of painting color, value, composition balance, line, shape, I'm missing one, texture. If we do a good job of painting all those, then human beings 1,000 years from now, unless they're twisted by their art education, if they can just rely, children 1,000 years from now who haven't had time to get twisted yet by perhaps their twisted educational system. I'm more optimistic than that, by the way. I think this season of perversion is going to end. What perversion? Okay, again, I don't want to get the perversion that art is about preaching political statements, about propagating political viewpoints. Absurd on so many levels, I don't even want to get into it, don't have the energy. But anyway, that's what the 20th century, that's what most 20th century art is about. That's why they don't try to teach you to paint in most art schools. They try to teach you how to thrive or get by or fit in to the art establishment, which is about preaching, propagating political viewpoints. All right, so so if you paint stuff that looks like paint, line, shape, color, design, value, texture, and so on and so forth, in 1,000 years, human beings, with their pure naked eye, so to speak, will relate to your painting. So that's why even the example on this page that I put together, on the left was Robert Wood, on the right was Edgar Payne. What's the difference? For Edgar Payne, who is one of the fathers of the California School of Plein Air Painting, at least that's how I was introduced to him. I don't know if it's true, but be that as it may. He was a big dog famous painter in the middle of the 20th century. But everything he painted, all of his high Sierra, plein air mountain landscapes, were what I like to call thinly veiled excuses. The non-artist would look at it and say, ooh, mountains, ooh, pine trees, ooh, rocks, right? The artist, the savvy artist, in the second half of his or her journey would say, ooh, color, ooh, texture, ooh, shape, ooh, line, ooh, values, okay? And so Edgar Payne's paintings are already a mere 70 years after he was in the ascendancy or very famous, holding up much better, because he was an abstract painter is another way to put it. Anyway, so there you go. There's a rant. If you're new to this channel, if you're new to my Facebook channel, because everybody's new to that. That's a rant. That's a theme that we come back to periodically. So why don't I do now? And again, part of my some of you non-artists, when you look at most paintings that are impressionistic, say like this, You have a sneaking suspicion, and this is kind of nasty, you artists, bless your heart, hold your ear, put your hands over your ears. You have a sneaking suspicion that this or that artist is painting in an impressionistic manner because they lack the skill or chops to paint in a realistic manner. And I hate to tell you that I'm afraid you're correct. Now, you artists, that's all right. You just do what you're supposed to do. Do what's fun, go for it. But if you're a young artist, you're the person I want. You're the person whose twig I want to bend. If you're an old artist and you're having great fun painting, then just keep going, go for it, go for it, go for it. I don't want to discourage you in the least. And I don't want to discourage you from your impressionistic paintings. But if you're a young artist, your job is to learn to paint realism. And then in later years, you'll have lots of opportunity to take your realism and add energy to it. All right, now I started out real snarky today and then I went really heavy. So snarky and heavy, which one did you like better? Don't answer that. I don't want to know. I do not. I don't want to know. How about nice? How about nice? Where's nice? Is there room for nice? Okay, hang on. Nice is coming up. So glad you stayed with it. Coming up next on the docket, Dan Nelson being nice. Maybe. All right. Let me go back. Missing a lot here. Regina, you think you know who I mean? Oh, because you saw the hand wrap, right? Bless his heart. Breaks my heart. Anyway. Gee, Uncle, don't touch it. Hello, Jane. Thank you for joining us. Jane, an interesting revelation this week. Way to go. Way to go, Sister Jane. Good for you. Are you serious, Uncle? The first sailor passed away today from COVID-19 on the Roosevelt aircraft carrier. That is sad. Whew. It kind of puts the serious in it, doesn't it? Every time you hear about somebody famous, we had last night. Now look what you've done, Uncle. You got us all on the. No, last night we got a text that a friend of ours, brother died. So that's the first. That's the closest we've been hit. The brother lived in New Jersey. That's good news, isn't it, Uncle? You know, you guys. Hopefully, you're coming out of it. All of y'all. More sparkle, more sparkle. It's just taking whatever color is already there. I'm calling that X. And adding titanium. Adding a light to it, calling it X plus 1. X plus 2, it doesn't quite have the same effect. There's too much of a gap. If there's too much of a gap between the color and the sparkle you're putting on it, it doesn't read as sparkle. It just reads as a completely separate item or a completely separate color. So the fact that it's X plus just 1 is important, not X plus 7. That just comes off. It might be okay in a painting, but it's not the principle that I'm talking about here. Oh, and here's a question too. So if once you've put down, like on the face of this building right here, It was X, and then I did a bunch of X plus 1, not over the whole thing, of course. You understand, you have to let some of the under show through. But now it's largely that face, there's a lot of X plus 1. Well, can I do it again? And the answer is, oh, absolutely. So in fact, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm coming back now and saying, wait a minute, now there's room for even more light, more sparkle on that face of that building. So reductio ad absurdum. It means if you follow this principle to the absurd, you end up, your painting is done when you put your last daub of pure titanium white on the last smudge that was visible, and your painting is completely white. That's right, that's reduced to the absurd. So, of course, you can't reduce it to the absurd. There is a intuitive stopping point, shall we say. I have this, if there's anybody out there who ever does cityscapes as I do, here's one of those neat little things to learn by rote, things that is, again, and most of the time for me, the light's coming either in from the left or the right. Usually the light's not right behind me or right in front of me. That's not good lighting, right? So the light is coming from the left or the right, and as we look down a street, we connote that there's a space between this row of buildings, and in that space the sun is coming through and hitting just so that's what's happening right there. Do you see? It is in my photograph, but it's much more subtle. If I weren't looking for it, I probably wouldn't see it in that photograph. So it's one of those little things that, ooh, you know, it looks cool if. Same as wet streets almost always look cool. As I like to say, we like to see paintings of other people. We don't like to get caught in the rain, but we love seeing paintings of other people caught in the rain. I need to do some sparkle on that building right there. Am I standing right in your way? Almost, not quite. So you understand this concept of sparkle. It doesn't mean, of course, that you cover up, just as if the sparkle in an eyeball doesn't cover up the entire eyeball. How crazy, right? No, it's just a little bit in the eyeball. Same thing here. That's what this sparkle does. By the way, now I'm just messing up the marks that I made. Sparkle is always, always, always light. It's never, there's no such thing as dark sparkle. That's dark details, and there are times when I need to go back, we need to go back and add more dark. And as I've already said, when that time comes, you just make sure that you're adding, that the dark that you're adding is transparent. That's the rule anyway. The rule can be broken. That rule is most often broken when you're doing portraiture. In portraits, the light, the slightly darker needs to be an opaque, because the tolerances in portraiture are so much more subtle. So that rule about you get dark with transparent doesn't so much apply to portraits. So that rule gets superseded by another rule, which is in portraits, subtlety of color is more the beauty of a portrait than knock you over the head kind of contrast. I need my yardstick again for a minute. I want to double check this. Yeah, good. Okay, good. The lines are pretty good on that building. That's a relief. Okay, I'm going to tackle that building later. I'm going to just do one more thing before I stop broadcasting. The painting is very close to finished. I need to fiddle along like this just a little bit more, but one definite sparkle need is these green trees here. So let's see what I can do here. Some Viridian green and some Hansa yellow. You know, bright, 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 freezing cold yellow, I like to call it. I say that because most early journey painters think yellow is warm. Well, it is, theoretically, but the pale yellows, cad yellow, light, Hansa yellow, what's the other one? The other common one. Those are not warm yellows. Those are cool yellows, and there's a world of difference between a warm and a cool yellow. Lemon yellow, yeah, that's lemon yellow hue. I'm sure they don't make lemon yellow out of lemons. I'm sure that's a surprise to a lot of you. What? Oh boy. Bear with me just a minute, mixing up a couple different greens. Oh boy. Too much of a good thing. That's what that oh boy was. Hey, I mentioned Thomas Kincaid. I already had my Thomas Kincaid moment for the day, so I don't need to do any more of him. But it was a lot more fun to pick on him when he was living. It really was. I was very sad when he passed away. Much too young and much too tragically. I like saying good things about him because I like to see my fellow artists having apoplectic fits. When I say good things about Thomas Kincaid. You should try it sometime, try it. Next time you're in a circle of really artsy artist friends, say, hey, you know what? The Thomas Kincaid guy is a pretty good painter. You better have your armor on. You're likely to be, or something, you're likely to be burned at the stake on the spot. Anyway, you know what's a little trick I learned from him? So I'm going to be snarky for a minute. Here, brace yourself. All you guys were all busy turning up your noses and despising him. I'm not saying you guys, but most of our artist friends were doing that. While they were all doing that, I was looking at his paintings and taking notes and saying, huh, now that's a good idea. Wow, now that's a good idea. Okay, so I came out on the better end of that deal because my friends were being snobs, and I was becoming a better artist. So here's one of the tricks I learned from him. I don't remember learning. I'm sure a lot of other people know it, but I don't remember learning it from anybody. And that is this. Anytime, by the way, this is a rare moment. I'm removing paint here. That's what I tell you don't do. Here I am doing it. Here's what I learned from him. Whenever you have a row of trees, whether it's a row of trees like this going down the street, or whether it's a bunch of trees on a hillside, you make different trees. Even if it's the same brand of tree, even if it's the same kind of tree, you make different trees, different colors. That's a good trick. So one is slightly more yellow. They're all green, say, but one is slightly more yellow green, one's slightly more bluish greens, one's more slightly red, brown, purple, you name it. I saw that years ago and said, doggone, that's a good idea. So you don't have to tell anybody if you don't want to. If you want to save your pride, don't tell anybody you got it from Thomas Kincaid. Tell them you got it from Dan Nelson. Yeah, there's a ticket. Don't tell them he got it from Thomas Kincaid. Okay, so the green that I've been putting on here as sparkle is a real simple mistake. It wasn't X+1, it was about X+3. It was just what I was putting on was way too light. So now I'm back in the ballpark, okay? Closer, it doesn't work if you put, and especially when it comes to foliage, by the way. This is a separate lesson that I learned years ago, back when I was in my first half of my art journey, truly, learning how to paint foliage on trees. One mistake is to make it too contrasty. Keep you know, the light side of the tree and the dark side, keep it a little bit subtle in all the stages in between. All of a sudden then I look up here and say, wait, I did that here. Okay, never mind. Yeah. Anyway, that was a good trick for me to learn. Might be a good one for some of you to learn. Keep the contrast, if you will. Keep it reined in. Don't let it get too crazy. You don't want the highlights too high or the lowlights too low. In fact, that's a little bit a weakness in this. By the way, right now I'm doing a blue tree. You probably can't see it, can you? Probably a little too subtle. But anyway, it's a bluish green that I've got on my brushes right now. It wouldn't look bluish if I put this paint over here on a blank canvas. It would look green, but compared to this green, it looks kind of bluish. So there you go. Another little trick. Again, am I going to be right in your way? Not quite. Okay, I'll stay here then. And of course, as you know, trees, of course, get bluer as they recede down the street. And that is happening very slightly here. This looks muddy right here. Pretty easy fix. I need to stick some tree holes into those trees so we see some of the buildings coming through. Here now, and here's the very reason why. The traditional name for these is sky holes, and I rant and rail and rage against that. The stupidity of whatever committee, I'm being facetious, I'm sure, who knows when, but whatever group of artists decided to call these sky holes was just, should have been slapped. Why? Because so much of the time it's not a sky behind your tree. So what do I call this then? A building hole? Anyway, so they should be called tree holes, and often I'll just buck tradition and call them that. So these are tree holes. I was describing, forgive me, I've said this joke so many times, but I thought it was so funny. I was teaching this one time live in a class with about, most of my classes, you know, are women, retired women, you know, older than me, half of them, more than half of them. That's all right. That's who has the flexibility of schedule and interest and so on to take painting classes. So I was talking about this, how we shouldn't call it sky holes, and talking about building holes, or, you know, is it a car hole? One of the sweet little ladies in there said, whatever you do, don't let your donkeys get loose behind the trees. That's all she said. It's to this day, as you can tell, because I keep telling this story over and over. I just thought that was so funny. Sweet little old lady. If my mom's listening, apologize. My mom would not approve of that humor, but she might chuckle when nobody's looking. Some of you are still trying to figure out, well, I don't get it. What's wrong with donkeys getting loose behind the trees? Okay, so that little bit of sparkle there again, right? With those tree holes, the brown orange coming through the trees. That was just a purely abstract mark right there. That's all. Not supposed to represent anything at all. And I still haven't done anything either with my bicyclist, and I think he needs some work, and I think my pedestrians might need a little work. So I might do that after I hang up with you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me, having fun, listening to my bad, oft-repeated jokes. Evidently, I'm a very simple person. I can laugh at the same joke over and over and over again. Which I'm sure shows some kind of mental deficiency, but there you go. Mixing up a dirty mid-tone brown. Whoa, that's way too bright for that. All right, what I know what I need more than anything else now is to walk away from this painting for a minute, and then when I come back, see it with fresh eyes. Hello, Donna Savage. Let's see, what else, you guys? Oh, I should cover it in glitter for more sparkle. I actually have used glitter in some of my paintings. I know that sounds funny. You'd have to see it to see if it was a good idea. Would a girlfriend painted house contain cellulose beauty? Oh, sad, sad. You're looking up how Thomas Kincaid died, eh? Dang, not a happy story. Don't like that one at all. All right. Again, thank you again for your company, your jokes, Uncle, the rest of you. Uncle set a very high bar about the time some of the rest of us started rising to the occasion. 3:30 on Sunday, Monday afternoon. I don't even know what day it is. That's a good time to stop and have a little snack and then come back with fresh eyes, okay? I like the painting. It's a good one. I've got some things to decide up here. I like this red mark that I added with a red pencil. By the way, it's a watercolor pencil, but watercolor pencil dragged through wet oil medium turns it into, in my opinion's right, turns it into oil medium. And then when I paint up to it, anyway, that's completely ensconced. But I like that mark. It was crazy when I did it, but I'm glad it's there. Likewise, I've got another big slash right here that I painted up to both sides. I like that. I'm just looking and thinking before I hang up on you. I have some decisions to make on this whole side. I like it, but I need to think about that a little bit. Think about this a little bit. Everything else, I'm sure I can quit, call it good enough. But I'm going to do maybe just make sure my pedestrians are just abstract enough, but just believable. Like this guy over here is just a little bit too ghosty for my taste. Oh, by the way, there's a mistake in this painting I discovered on Saturday, way too late. And I know this street right here, it's one way going that way. So look, I've got a car going the wrong way. Hopefully my client won't know, but he already listened to this broadcast, so he knows too. But I'm glad it's going that way. I feel like that my intuition was right. I think that car needs to be going that. I don't want it going this way. Anyway, that's my answer. I'm sticking with it, right? Who knows? We'll never know if it's truly. Is it just rationalization? Could be. All right. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your company. Bye-bye.